Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 111 of the Kiss Army Nation podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Pasquale Veri.
And I am Claudio Spera. Welcome to the show, everyone.
We have devoted several discussion panel episodes to changes which have affected the band in one way or another. Several examples include changes in the musical direction, the diversity in their solo albums, heck, even changes in their history. But we really never discussed the biggest change in influence of all, the changes in the KISS lineup and how that affected the band. So it begs the question, did the lineup changes affect the band in the long run? Or was it just like a blip in KISStory? Have the replacements made an impact as huge as Peter and Ace? Or again, was that just a blip in KISStory? So let's see what the panel has to say.
And always with something really interesting to say, we are once again really happy that we're joined by our panel guest, Patrick de Montigny, our dear friend Pat. And we're so excited to have back on the show, Rolla Brown.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Hope you guys are doing okay. So we haven't done an off-the-topic question in a while on our discussion panel. So let's start with this episode with the following question. So we often hear fans say that the end of the road for KISS is not really the end of the road. Isn't that obvious? And can there really be an end of the road for musicians and a brand, not a band, a brand like KISS? Is there such a thing as the end of the road? So we're going to start with Pat, right?
It's probably the end of the touring cycle as we know it. But to say the end of the road, no more shows, I have a hard time believing that. Because, again, most of the bands who said we're not doing it again did it in some fashion in some other way. So, you know, the last show in New York, maybe of a full-length tour, but not like New York won't be the last shows. I have a feeling.
But what do you think about musicians in general when they said that, you know, they hung up the boots and they don't do any music anymore? Do you think that's possible for a musician?
I don't think so, because what else are they going to do? I mean, it's a passion they've had for their whole life. To say from one day to another, okay, I'm doing nothing, just going and play golf, I don't think so. I think at some point it's in their blood. They need to do it in some other ways.
It is true. Roland, what's your take?
I agree with Patrick. I mean, I see them doing residencies. I see them still working with their solo careers and doing a show, like he said, here or there every now and again, maybe at a ball game or, you know, a hockey game or something like that. I mean, even a residency in Vegas, I see that too. So I don't see them ending. And the merch, that's never going to end too. I don't.
Yeah, then you make reference to the brand there, right? So it will never end.
Yeah,
Pask?
I think I'm going to start with some controversy right off the bat.
There you go.
Okay, so you know, when fans say KISS will never call it quits, the way I see it, like a musician who's creative cannot ever call it quits. They always have to create. So I think in that sense, KISS should always continue on as musicians. But let's be honest, how long have KISS not been true musicians? It's not about the creativity. It's not about the music. It's about the brand and how much money it's going to come in. It's about the merchandise. It's about that perfectly polished show that's really well packaged as a brand. But there's no creative outlet for the band. So I think in that sense, the band hit the end of the road a long, long time ago. And right now, all we're seeing is the brand continuing. And part of that brand, the touring entity that is KISS, is over. But the brand will continue on in one way or another. I see it with a lot of merchandising, for sure. Yeah. And yeah, one-off shows. But not because, they missed the music. No, it's because it's going to be another payday for them. If they do a residency, it's not for any creative reason. It's for that. It's to continue that payday. It's to continue the brand. Now, I think in my opinion, the only member of the present band right now who's truly creative is Paul. And I think Paul is going to continue in other avenues creatively, being his solo career with Soul Station, even cooking. Who knows? He might have a cooking show. You never know. I'd watch it. You know, his paintings. He will continue on creatively. Gene, I think it's going to be simply constantly branding KISS with new merchandise. He's part of a production company now. He's coming out with a movie on sharks or something with, I believe it's the director, Rennie Harlan or something like that. So I you know, Gene back in the music business. Yeah, I think that's a direction that KISS is going to go, in my opinion.
But we know that, you know, as part of KISStory, we know that the only guy who really enjoyed being on the road more than anybody else was Gene, right? So don't you think that he's gonna have the tendency to maybe do a Gene Simmons band and play with, let's say, Ryan or Jeremy or those guys like he did before? Don't you think that he's gonna need that to be in a stage?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, that is hard to say. I don't think Gene needs it.
Okay.
I think it's just another outlet for merchandising for him.
Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Okay, I'm pretty much with you, Pascal, on this. So the brand, it's a no-brainer that it will continue on. That's why it's not a coincidence that they started to release, you know, box sets and off the soundboard and all of that. That will continue, and I'm happy with that. You know, I have no issues absolutely with them releasing stuff. Now creating new material, we know that this is over a long time ago, and the live show now, it's basically a product. You know, it's going through the motions. There's no jamming. There's no nothing new. Even the sound check that they're doing, you know, for the meet and greets, it became also a staple of most of the time. You know, it's all the time the same. So yeah, I agree with that. You know, creatively, I don't think it's hard to say because, you know, they only know what they feel. But as musicians, maybe that's over a long time ago. I don't know how Eric and Tommy might feel about it, because these guys, you know, they've been blessed to be part of KISS, and Eric, he played with so many other bands. I don't know if they're gonna miss. Maybe I think these two guys, they're gonna do something related to music in the future. That's what I think.
I think Eric will definitely continue drumming with other bands like he always did.
Yeah.
A gun for hire. I think I heard somewhere that Tommy is uninterested in being in another band or doing anything
another
musically.
band. Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with Tommy. I don't know.
Interesting. Well, what a start for this episode, eh? Oh my God. So
okay, it only gets better from here, because, you know, I've really been looking forward to this particular discussion, because I have a feeling, Claudio, like you said at the beginning, that we're going to have very diverse answers here. And so let's get started and let's see what happens.
So let's go with number one. So changes, okay? So the first personal change came after the departure of Peter Criss, and as a result, Eric Carr, our dear Eric, was introduced to the KISS Army and KISStory. So what are your personal thoughts about Eric Carr, and in your opinion, what were his biggest contributions to KISStory? Patrick, our dear Pat, so this topic was your idea, so you're on. Go for it.
I think Eric, when he first came in, KISS was still a pop band, because as we had discussed previously, Dynasty and Mask. And here comes this guy who plays like John Bonham. So I'm one of the rare ones who thinks that the mixture at first was so-so. When I think of Eric, I think after of the other Creatures, Lick It Up, that's where it really started to gel for me. So I think his greatest contribution was he was at his peak with the Creatures and Lick It Up eras. After that, maybe with the style of music Kiss adapted, he became he was still drumming very well, but I think the creativity, there was not as much room for it. But his greatest contribution, when I think of Eric Carr, Creatures, look it up.
Okay. Rolla?
Same here. I mean, he was an innovator, and I think he brought the classic Kiss sound that we were all used to into the 80s and more. Like Patrick said, a heavier hitter. I mean, he was doing things that a lot of other drummers weren't doing with the snare drum, and like Patrick said, he could replicate John Bonham. And there were only a few drummers that could do that at the time. So he brought us forward.
All right, Pask, what's your take?
I was there when Eric joined the band. And I remember reading my first article on Eric, and I wanted to learn everything about him. And to me, what I found interesting was like, Kiss is continuing now with another member. And I didn't feel as bad for Peter leaving because Kiss was continuing on with another member. And all I wanted to do is learn more and more about this member. And at that point, when I was, 1980, I was like 12 years old or something. So I didn't see it really as deep as I see it now. I saw it nothing more than, we have a new band member. He's cool. Musically, I didn't really listen to it or see a big difference between him and Peter Criss. It's later on that I realized that Eric's biggest contribution, what was his bombastic drumming in Creatures. And then I also realized later on in my KISStory that, this was starting to become the Paul and Gene show in the 80s, where they had all the control over the band. And the unfortunate reality is, I think that they really kept his talent down. And if they let him go, boy, what he could have contributed to the band would have, the sky's the limit. And you also see, you see that in the 80s. I almost feel like when I listen to Eric in the 80s, like he wants to go crazy, but he's controlling himself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I always felt that with his playing. He could do so much more than what we saw in Kiss. So I wish that he was allowed to contribute more to the band, because we could have seen what Eric Carr was really all about.
Absolutely. One of the bad things of being the last is that you guys, you said everything that I wanted to say. So
we do it on purpose.
That's right. So, the truth to be told, I think it must have been difficult for Eric to get into the band and come up with The Elder, okay, where he doesn't even play in all of the songs. I agree with you guys. So his biggest musical contribution to me stands out with Creatures. I love what he does also on Lick It Up. And then with the other albums, Kiss going into more a poppy, keyboard-based stuff. I think he had a hard time to kind of find his place, because his bombastic drumming style, his technique, didn't have room, for an album like Crazy Nights, or even Asylum, right? But so bear with me. To me, his biggest contribution to KISStory is his humbleness and connection with the fans. Because if you talk to all of the Kiss fans, the first thing that pops up is saying he was the coolest guy on earth. He was really approachable. He was really cool to everybody. And I think that balance at that time, it was really needed for Kiss, because, Gene and Paul, we all know how Gene and Paul are. And, at that time, there was so many changes on guitar players that basically we didn't even know who the guitar player was for Kiss, in those times. But he took, the flag and made, fans really connect with Kiss again, because he was a real guy. To me, I'm not taking anything out from him on musically, but to me, his biggest contribution was being the coolest guy in KISStory with the fans. That to me, that's what it was.
No, excellent for going last. Very good. Good point.
There you go. Thank you.
Good point.
I just came up with that right away.
All right. So now with the exodus of Ace Frehley came Vinnie Vincent. So what is your personal opinion of Vinnie, and how do you believe that he contributed to KISStory? We'll start with Raul this time.
You had to start with me. And you did that because, I'm a huge Ace fan. No, Vinnie, I think Vinnie walked into the room and took everything we knew to be KISS and flipped it upside down and landed us flat in the middle of 80s metal. That's what I think. Did he save KISS? I don't know. Maybe that's debatable, but he had a big part in it. And I think he and Eric Carr together helped KISS. Well, they brought us into the 80s metal, of course, and they helped KISS be adaptable, because that's one thing we've always talked about on the show, is how adaptable KISS has always been as far as moving forward with the times and being exactly what we wanted them to be as a band. Yeah, I think that was pretty much what he did. As far as him as a person, I have met him. He seemed to be very personable and very appreciative. He was very kind, but I know as far as with him being in the band, he brought a lot of drama and a lot of chaos. And I think Gene said at one time that he had the key to the castle and he threw it all away. So, I mean, there's that.
Okay. Patrick, what do you think?
I think Vinnie brought a lot. Rolla kind of beat me to it, but a combo of Vinnie and Eric modernized KISS. I think that's what they needed, because you got to remember in the early 80s, you had Van Halen.
Mm-hmm.
So, KISS needed to maybe get a little more modern in that sense. I'm sorry it didn't work out, because the other contribution that Vinnie brought was the songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
We have to remember that on Lick It Up, he's very much present on that album. And we kind of can tell that after his departure, it's all a matter of opinions, but the albums were a little weaker. Yeah, I think Vinnie, his biggest contribution was his talent and songwriting. I can only imagine if he had worked out. I'm not going to say who's right or who's wrong. I believe that KISS could have had a wonderful second life, just like Sabbath with Dio or Van Halen with Sammy Hagar, whatever. That's an opinion, but I think Vinnie did have the potential. It's just that things didn't gel for many reasons.
Yeah.
Okay, so Claudio, this time I'm going to go last, so you go next.
Okay. It's interesting. That's why I said at the beginning that this episode was going to be kind of interesting, because when we talk about contribution, there's so many types of contribution, right? So musically, personality, they all make a big part of KISStory. In the case of Vinnie, to me, I'm with Pat on this one. To me, his songwriting, it's what he most gave to the band. Creatures, Lick It Up, and remember, they came back to Vinnie for revenge. Okay, so I have to say, at least in my opinion, two of my most favorite albums, Revenge and Creatures, they have Vinnie's stamp all over the map in the songwriting, basically. Live, well, I'm not, he didn't stay much in the band, but I don't think that live he gelled with the band, with the show, because he was shredding all the time and he was showing off, and that didn't fly with Paul and Gene, and KISS being a live band, that didn't go well. Now, but really an important member of KISStory. But I think that he stayed the right amount of time. I don't think that he was going to last longer with Gene and Paul, in the driver's seat.
Well, when Vinny joined the band, I wasn't there at that point. I had checked out, so I've got no emotional investment in Vinny, and I never did. But let's forget about Vinnie Vincent, the person, for a second. Mm-hmm. Let's pretend we are the casual fan and we have no idea who Vinny is or was. Mm-hmm. And if you just listen to Creatures, like you said, Claudio, his stamp is all over it. That's an amazing album. Look It Up. That's an amazing album, despite what we think of him. Even if we didn't know who Vinnie Vincent was, like those two albums are incredible. And look at some of the songs he wrote for Revenge. Some amazing stuff. Yeah. So if you look at it objectively that way, I think his best contribution was behind the scenes with the songwriting and the playing on the studio albums. And we got to see who Vinny was live. And that's when the fans got to know who he was. And that's when we started to dislike him, because we didn't like that guy on stage because he wasn't playing the Kiss game. He was trying to have the Vinnie Vincent show. Right. Not a Kiss show. Now, I said earlier that it's really a shame that Eric Carr wasn't allowed, in my opinion, to basically shine as a drummer. And I don't think Paul and Gene could have given Vinnie Vincent that kind of power, because he would have overblown everything. He would have taken advantage of that. He had to be reined in, whereas Eric Carr should have been let loose.
Yeah, good point. So now we're falling into the 80s, and we all know that it was a very difficult time for the band, with the revolving door of new members, mainly on lead guitar. So once Vinny left the band, our dear Mark St. John took on the reins, and for a very short period of time, unfortunately. Has he been in the band long enough for you to have an opinion on him? Has he even made a slight impact to KISStory? This is a very interesting question, and I'm so anxious to see what you guys have to say. Pask, you go first.
Okay, now I have an opinion on Mark because thanks to Patrick, remember Pat, you had that Montreal Kiss convention, and you had Mark St. John as a guest, and I met him. I got something signed from him. We talked a little bit at the show. Super nice guy. A friend and I, we met him at a bar downstairs in the hotel, and he just started talking to us, and it was nice. and it was such an amazing time, such an interesting person to talk to. That was the only exposure I had to Mark St. John in Kiss, because at that point, like back in the early 80s when he joined the band, I had already checked out. So musically, I didn't know who he was. I knew that he was part of Kiss. To be honest, I didn't really care. Even at the expo, oh cool, Mark St. John from Kiss. The only reason I really got to like him is because I met him at the bar. I got to know him as an actual human being, and I was so happy to have had that experience. But if you look at it as a Kiss fan, in my opinion, he's basically a blip in KISStory, unfortunately.
Of course.
Okay. Rolla?
I think he was kind of a placeholder, so to speak. He kind of held a place there in that genre of that form of music for whatever came next. I mean, I'm kind of with Pask on it. He was kind of just a blip there in time.
Okay. Pat?
Yeah, I'm pretty much with everyone on that one. He didn't last long enough, unfortunately, to even. A quick story regarding the expo you were talking about. When I was doing promotion, I was giving out flyers, and this guy has one of the flyers which had Mark's photo, and he says, "Oh, that's not Kiss." And you know what? Of course, I wasn't going to say that in front of him, but I kind of said, you know what? I kind of agree with you. Not because he's not an original member, but his tenure with the band was so shortly. He never wrote a song for Kiss, never really, he did a show and a half or something like that. So unfortunately, it's not because of him, his playing or anything. It's just that he didn't last long enough to even have an impact on Kiss. So like Paul said, the the first John Paul I died instantly, and that's pretty. The comparison is pretty much accurate.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm with you guys too. I really don't have an opinion because he didn't stay longer enough, and to me, that's the perfect example of a hired gun. So that's what it is for a rock and roll band, and that's at the extreme, right? So he was hired, and he was proposed by, I think, Jackson Guitars or some of those guys, and then yeah, he kind of played during the Animalize and all of that. To me, his technique, his playing style didn't fit with what Kiss. But Animalize was really successful. So if we see at the that was kind of I couldn't say a big comeback, but it did really well. And but no, to me, it's the last question says, has he even made a slight impact to KISStory? Very minor, very minor. Everybody had an impact on KISStory, even guys who were not, members of the band, the management and all of that. But he was really, 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 really small. What he as part of KISStory, he to me he doesn't even count almost.
Okay. So I guess it's safe to say that once Mark left, the band began to see some stability with Bruce Kulick. He obviously made numerous contributions to KISStory. So what are your thoughts on Bruce, and what do you believe were his top 3 contributions to KISStory? This time we'll start with you, Claudia.
All right. Well, I really love Bruce, and I love every aspect of his playing style and his personality. His connection with fans. I always make reference to connection with fans because at the end of the day, at this age, this is what we want. We want approachable guys. We want humble guys, and he's always been like this. He never changed. And to me, coming back to the question, his 3 main contributions, I have to put first, musically speaking. His musicianship, it's amazing. To me, it's one of the best musicians that were part of KISStory. Then he really shines on Carnival of Souls. You might not like the album, but his signature is all over the place on Carnival of Souls. And I don't know how many musicians could actually transmit his way of writing and playing on an album, and Bruce did it. And his last, to me, main contribution is what he has been doing for the fans in the cruise and all related events. That to me, how many people go to the cruise just to see Bruce? His show on the ship. It's the best thing that can happen to you. The guy playing all the 80s medleys and 90s. Kiss is not doing that, but he does it. So to me, that's part of KISStory, a big part of KISStory.
All right. Patrick, what do you think?
I think Bruce brought stability to the band, and also I think he was also, thanks to him, Kiss were going to be taken seriously musically, because Vinnie was a super guitarist, but he didn't last long enough, and all he wanted to do was shred. Whereas Bruce could, listen to his solo on Forever. I was amazed when I listened to Hot in the Shade, and oh my God, this is amazing. Not me, especially me not being a big fan of ballads, but I was really impressed. And also his solo on Holy. Wow, I mean, how can you not like that? I think Revenge, that's his moment. And also the other contribution he did for Kiss was Unplugged, because Unplugged, first thing that comes to mind for many fans is that it's the beginning of the reunion with Ace and Peter. And yes, the last portion is awesome, but I've always said, despite all that Bruce is the unsung hero of Unplugged.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Because you listen to his solo, like my favorite, Sure Knows Something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Acoustic guitar. I mean, that I could listen to that over and over again.
Amazing.
So So again, he doesn't get enough credit for Unplugged. And likable guy and everything, so down to earth. But can also shred. He can prove it, but he doesn't need to overdo it to show that he can do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, Rala, what do you think?
Well, they just kind of hit everything on the head that I wanted to say. I mean, Bruce is an amazing guitarist. He's so versatile. He can play anything. And he's an amazing writer. And what Claudio said with his impact on the fans, he has such heart, and he's such a charismatic, down-to-earth guy, and he's so approachable. And he's one of the few people that when you meet him, you see his heart right away. I mean, he's just a great guy. I mean, there's what's not good to say about him.
I remember checking back into the band in the late 80s and seeing Bruce Kulick with Kiss. And I remember thinking to myself right away, wow, this guy is cool. He fit with the band. I joined Kiss again with Hot in the Shade. And I thought that the look of the band it was cohesive. He fit right in. And looking back, I would see that, one of his contributions is definitely his musicianship. Because I think that unbeknownst to Gene and Paul, their music started to change. Their music was a lot faster. And as a result, a lot of their 70s stuff became a lot faster. So sort of like unbeknownst to Paul and Gene, I think Bruce was allowed to shine more than Eric and Vinnie was.
Yeah.
And we saw more of Bruce's talents. And like you said, Claudia, with Carnival of Souls, my goodness. I mean, that was his album. That was his album.
Yeah.
And you really saw what he can do. And one of my favorite songs on that album is his contribution, his vocal contribution to the album.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing hearing him sing, and that they gave him the last song on the album to finish it was fitting because it was his album for sure. Another contribution for me was definitely that he finally gave the band some stability. I think that, how long could Kiss have lasted if they kept on having that revolving door of musicians in the band? And if it wasn't for Bruce, would the band have made it through the 80s? I don't know.
Yeah.
And the third contribution, obviously, it was mentioned before again by Claudio, is trying to he's keeping 80s Kiss alive.
Yep.
And I think that's amazing because it's so unrepresented by Kiss. And what you see with Bruce and his band on the Kiss cruise, I mean, it's second to none. I remember at the last cruise, Claudio, he was getting upset because things weren't exactly right on stage.
Remember, yeah.
But when I know Bruce and I've talked to him personally, and like Raul said, he's such a genuinely nice guy. And he was getting upset, not because he's a prima donna, because he wanted everything perfect for the fans, because the fans deserve it. The fans deserve to hear the 80s Kiss the way it deserved to be heard. And that is, I believe, Bruce's biggest contribution.
Yeah. And when you guys talked about giving Kiss some stability, I think that one of the things that stands out for Bruce, he's a true professional, and that's what that's actually a very smart guy. One of the things that I admire the most on people is when you're intelligent, and he knew how to play the game with Gene and Paul. He didn't need to show off. He didn't need to confront. He found his place. He was part of one of the biggest bands in the world, and that's why he's still part of the family. He's still around, with Gene and Paul in the cruise. No need to fight, and he's still giving us, hope, and he's giving us what we want to hear, which is, 80s and 90s Kiss. So, really smart guy, really pro. Really.
Very true. Very true.
So let's go to our dear Eric Carr. Unfortunately, Eric passed away on November 24th, 1991. And he was, of course, replaced by Eric Singer. And Singer had some big shoes to fill. So what is your opinion on him? And how big of an impact has he had on KISStory, knowing that he was coming from playing with big names also? So that was not his introduction to music. So what do you think his impact was on KISStory? I'm going to start with Pat this time.
Well, I hate that Eric Carr died, really. But knowing what we know now, I think he might have left the band anyway. So, having said that, I think Eric Singer was the logical choice, whatever under which circumstance. And I think he brought maybe a spark back to Kiss, the same way Eric Carr did when he joined in 1980. And I think the mixture of Bruce and Eric Singer was something to look forward to, because we got Revenge and Carnival of Souls. We got a heavier Kiss, which I think lots of Kiss fans wanted.
Yep.
So I don't think, this is my opinion, Revenge could have been what it became had it been Eric Carr on it. That's my opinion. And I think Eric Singer brought back a spark that was missing for a long time. And I like what he brought. When I think of Eric Singer, I think of the 1992, 1996 era.
There you go.
Yeah.
Rolla?
I'm going to agree with the Pat here and say the same thing. I mean, he brought the heavy hitting drumming that we need, that Eric Carr brought into the band, except he went a step further with it. And Pat said before that he didn't think that Kiss gave Eric the chance to express himself more. And I think with Eric Singer, they've allowed him to do that. And not only that, the vocals that Eric has, I mean, he's got that rough, gravelly voice that the band needed. And I just think he's brought a lot, especially with his drumming and his voice.
Yeah.
All right. Busk?
Again, when Eric Singer joined the band, I thought he is the perfect fit for the band. And I loved the Revenge look of Kiss at that time. And that look fits so well with the music. And, what I can't stand is, now that Eric is with the makeup, people say, oh, he's an imposter. He's playing like Peter Criss. No, he's not actually. He's not at all. And that's the beauty of what Eric can do. He's playing Peter Criss's fills, but he's doing it with his own style. And you see the signature Eric Singer when he plays classic Kiss. And that is a talent that not many drummers have. And I got to be honest, I remember when the reunion tour happened, yeah, I was excited about it, but I was also disappointed that era of Kiss was over. I was hoping that era of Kiss would continue. And if you would ask me what was my favorite lineup, it's definitely Paul, Gene, Bruce, and Eric Singer.
Wow.
And I wish we had an opportunity to see more of what they did with Revenge and Carnival of Souls. I don't think it would have lasted much longer after that, personally, But if it had, I think it would have been so cool. I love Eric's contribution to the band and his continued contribution, because we keep talking about who saved Kiss, blah blah blah. Well, you know what? It's 2023, and we're still seeing Kiss live to this day, and that's because of Eric and Tommy.
Yeah.
It's because of them. They bring musicianship, they bring stability, they bring professionalism. And I remember seeing them or hearing them at the 2004 concert, and that was the first time I felt, wow, this band, I've never heard them so tight before.
Yeah.
And I think they've been at their best ever since musically, and that's because of Eric and Tommy. So again, we're just focusing on Eric here, but again, an amazing contribution musically by Eric.
So let me ask you a question to all three of you, because sometimes I think that this is my I don't know. I kind of differentiate Eric in the 92 to 96 to the Catman Eric. Okay, I don't know if you feel the same, but because he's playing, it's obviously not the same. Kiss is playing, almost, the same set list over and over again. But I can feel that his technique and his way of playing has been like, I don't know if I should say toned down or something, I'm not saying that he's been asked to play like Peter, but don't you guys see a difference between that Eric Carr, that Eric Singer from the 92, 96 era to what we see today live, or what we hear in Sonic Boom and Monster? This is just me, or do you guys see the same now?
It's different. I'll just leave it at that. It's different.
It's different.
Okay.
Well, it has to be different because they were, look what they did on Revenge and Carnival of Souls, right? And it was all original music, and he was allowed to shine on the new material. But now all they're playing is their legacy songs.
Yeah.
So he has to sort of tone it down to play within those confines. And then even Sonic Boom, they were trying to be more like classic Kiss. So again, he had to be more toned down. Yeah. But I don't know how you guys feel, but don't you think that he really stepped it up with Monster? That was more a hard-hitting album, and I think he really shined on that album.
Yeah, it is true.
He did.
It is true.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to wrap it up on Eric, and the reason why I wanted to kind of ask the question, it's because I was not as fortunate as you guys to see Kiss in the 70s. So to me, my first show was in '94, and that was with, of course, with Eric and Bruce. And I remember his way of playing was bombastic, even for the old songs. The way he was playing, songs like Parasite and Watching You and 100,000 Years is not the same way that he's playing those songs today. So he brought a breath of fresh air, that's for sure. His personality gelled well with the band. I was really happy when I saw, Kiss Exposed, and when we were seeing Kiss Confidential. Well, not Exposed, because Confidential, and it was amazing, to see the band. I'm with you, Pat. If you were asked to ask me what's my favorite lineup, it's interesting because we always have the tendency to talk about Peter and Ace, but that's definitely one lineup that it was really, really amazing with Eric and Bruce. Really amazing.
All right, so we all know our KISStory. Ace and Peter came back to the band for the reunion, and Eric and Bruce was asked to step aside. Despite having a farewell tour, Kiss continued on with Eric back on the drums and the inclusion of Tommy Thayer. So what are your thoughts on Tommy and his impact on KISStory? Rala, start with you again.
Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing.
She knows why. She knows why.
Because I'm a big Ace fan, and you gave me this question. And I don't mean any disrespect to Ace or to Tommy in any way, shape, or form. And this was really a hard question for me to answer. So I'm going to try to do it without any offense to either party. But I think that when Tommy Thayer joined the band, the spaceman returned, is how I see it. But he returned with pristine precision, sharp. I mean, his riffs were sharp and on point and pristine and on cue, and he was and still is the perfect spaceman. I mean, he did everything as per the brand as he should do, and I think that's his contribution. He brought the spaceman back. And a lot of people love him, and I personally like him. He's not too bad to look at either, I'll say that. and his vocals are great. He has a beautiful singing voice. So I mean, he brought a lot back with him, as well as bringing back the spaceman.
Wow.
As per the brand, I love that. It's so true, right? As per, I like that. I love that. Okay, Pat, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to be the party pooper here because I'm an Ace fan. I realize Ace left the band. I realize it's not Tommy Thayer begging Gene and Paul to put Ace's makeup on. I know all that, so no need to remind me. But I think it's unfortunate for Tommy in a way, because I agree with what Rolla said. He has talent. You know, I'm one of the rare ones who actually does like him singing his own songs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I listened to both albums, which he has a lead. He sings lead vocals on 2 songs, and you know what? They're good. I like him. You know, I like what he brings to Kiss musically. It's all good. Me being really stubborn with that, I believe the Spaceman makeup should be Ace, but it's not my band. It's not my. But I think it's unfortunate because it overshadows Tommy. I would have much preferred for Tommy, not for me, to have his own stage makeup or to be allowed without makeup. I believe his contribution would have been less in the shadow of the Spaceman, more Tommy Thayer. Because at least Eric Singer had a chance to have an impact as himself, not as wearing Peter's makeup.
Yeah.
Tommy has always been a Spaceman, which, you know, he's always going to be the second one. And again, I'm not saying that to say anything bad about him, because I do appreciate Tommy, but that's one of the reasons why I never agreed with the makeup. It's just an opinion.
Okay.
But you know, I love Monster.
Right, Claudia, what do you think?
That's my opinion.
Oh, it's a tough one, man. This is the one that this is where it starts, right? So look, to me it's a bit hard to disconnect my emotions from, you know, the musical contribution and the contribution to Kiss to history of the band and all of that. And I don't know why, for some strange reason, I cannot connect with Tommy. Okay, so if I don't have that emotional kind of bond with a member, I have the tendency to not being completely, you know, impartial. You know what I mean? So I tend to judge from a different, you know, perspective. I really value what he did for the band. Even, you know, we know that if he hadn't been there, you know, the reunion would have been tough for Ace, because you know, he was really there, you know, as a really key member of the Kiss family. You know, he created many products that up to this day are really, you know, enjoyable by the fans, you know, like Second Coming and all of that, you know, the Kissologies. So we cannot forget about that. So the guy, he was behind the, you know, the machine to create all of those products that we love. And now live, I'm not going to get into the makeup thing, because as I said, I really enjoy going to a Kiss show, but I don't know why I cannot connect with Tommy. His playing is fine. I like his style. I'm not crazy about it, but I like him. I think he has a significant contribution to history, but it's hard for me to say how much, or, you know, if he's really a really, really big part of history. I don't know. This is a tough one for me. Sorry about that.
Oh boy,
You, Buzz?
I haven't been looking forward to this one. Okay, all right. Here's the thing. So I remember when Eric Singer put on the Peter Criss makeup, the Catman makeup, and I thought he looked ridiculous. It's like, what are they doing? For me, it didn't work. Ironically, when Tommy put on the Ace makeup, I go, oh my God, he looks really good. He looked really cool as a spaceman. And that's when it clicked for me. When Eric and Tommy put on the makeup, for me, that's at that point when Tommy put it on, it worked. So for me, Tommy became the spaceman. And like Rella said so perfectly well, yes, he brought precision to the band. The band, for the first time in my opinion, was as tight as they can be. They were never as tight as you know, till Tommy Thayer joined the band. So I really appreciate that of Tommy. And unfortunately, Claudio, I have to agree with you that, how much of a contribution will he have to KISStory? Only because, like Pat said, he's in the shadow of Ace. And he's forced by Gene and Paul to play like Ace. And people think, oh, he could only do what Ace does. He can't do anything better. No, I'm sorry. I think he's a better player than Ace. He could do so much better than that if he wanted to, if he could. I saw him on Kiss Cruise 4. He was playing with Evan and somebody else, and I was floored by how amazing he played. You've never heard anything like it on any Kiss concert, because he wasn't allowed to play like that. But if he was let loose, he would be just incredible. He's so much better than what we see on stage musically. And again, I agree with Pat also. Is 2 songs from Monster and Sonic Boom were one of my favorites. And I wish they play that at the concerts, not Shock Me.
Right.
I hate that he plays Shock Me, I hate it. He could do so much better, so much better. Yeah. No. And another thing I'm going to say, it's controversial. I remember, we all had the same issue, right? Talking to our friends about Kiss and people making fun of us. Oh, you're a Kiss fan, I was actually ashamed of letting people listen to Ace music, because I hated his stuff. I hated his voice. And I thought, if I hate it, imagine the casual person out there, Because I remember going on road trips with friends of mine who weren't Kiss fans. And I insisted to play Kiss. But every time an Ace song came up, okay, you can skip that one. Because I don't have an excuse to make fun of me as a Kiss fan. Sorry, guys. That was back in the 80s. And I was also into the pop stuff and Durant. Okay, I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, but that's... I remember that. I remember that. No such shame with Tommy Thayer as the Spaceman and his playing. And again, because of Tommy and Eric, man, Kiss is still alive to this day. And props to both of them.
There you go. Well, here's a contentious question, and this is the tough part now. If you think this was easier up to now. So, did any of the replacements, Eric Carr, Vinnie Vincent, Mark St. John, Bruce Kulick, Eric Singer, or Tommy Thayer have as much as an impact on KISStory as Ace and Peter? Or Peter? Pass.
Oh, man, me first?
Yes, sir.
Oh, no, each of them are always going to be in the shadow of the legacy that was Kiss in the 70s. That was, even if you were there at the time, Kiss was larger than life. And, a funny thing how memory works, right? We tend to exaggerate how we remember things, and it was bigger and grander than it really was. But how we romanticize Kiss of the 70s cannot be matched today. No matter what, it'll never meet our expectations of how we remember the band back then. And I mean, back then we were kids, and we were just literally looking up to these gods, these musicians that were just larger than life. Their shows, the best show in the world, the biggest show in the world. You can't beat that. So anybody that came after that basically tried to keep the legacy alive. Yeah, but they were never that band that they were in the 70s. If anybody, in my opinion, would have a huge impact on KISStory, besides Ace and Peter, obviously, in my opinion, it would have to be Bruce Kulick, because of what he's doing now to keep the 80s Kiss alive. He's still in our collective memories of who he was back in the 80s, because he's still doing it today. And like you said, Claudio, he's still part of the family. Yeah. So I think when we look back at the end of the road and what all the 10 members contributed, apart from Paul and Gene, obviously, Ace and Peter, the biggest. But after that, for sure, Bruce Kulick.
All right. Pat?
Yeah, I think pretty much, I don't think they can have as big an impact, because Kiss became, like Pat said, big instantly, like maybe a year or two after they formed, they became so big, la Beatles. So it's unfair for the other members to step in and to be compared. I don't think they, even if they were 10 times the musicians that Ace and Peter were, because of their circumstances. I'm not talking about the people or the musicianship. It's just a circumstance that Kiss became. Let's say they would have had another guitar player before they made it big, then yeah, the second guitar player would have been more popular, because just like Iron Maiden, lots of Maiden fans don't know that there was a vocalist prior to Bruce Dickinson.
Yeah.
It would have been the same thing, but with Kiss, it was the original band that went big right away. So, it's very tough for anyone coming in and try to have as big an impact, especially when Kiss was on the decline. Not because Peter left, they were already on the decline.
Mm-hmm.
So you bringing anybody in, it's not gonna give back the hysteria that they had.
Okay. Beautiful, Rolla, your turn.
I'm going to agree with everything you guys just said, and I'm going to leave it there.
Hey, come on, it's not that easy. Come on.
You can't. Yes, you can't beat the original four.
Yeah.
I mean, they did it first. They were the innovators. They sparked a sensation, and the other guys, it's like Pat said, Bruce was great. They were all good, but they didn't have the impact that the original four had, in my opinion.
Okay. That's interesting. Doing some calculations, we're going to say that basically 6 years of the band defined what a 50 years old band is.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because, if you count, how many years Tommy was in the band, Eric Singer was in the band, Bruce Kulick, those 4 guys. And I think one of the main reasons it's because Kiss is it's a live band, and it's a visual band, and there are 4 characters. Okay, it's not about the music. If it were about the music, then we should be talking more about Vinnie Vincent, Bruce Kulick, and Tommy Thayer, and Eric Singer. But, the brand that we always talk about, we have our collectibles, we have our T-shirts, the logo, it was the original 4. Mm-hmm. You cannot beat that, right? So that doesn't happen with other bands, because they are not a visual band, and they are not a theatrical, and they are not about the live show. So that's why, the makeup makes such a big noise between Tommy and Ace. And, not so much on Eric and Peter. I don't know why, but not so much. But that's why, we're not discussing musicianship. We're discussing characters,
Mm-hmm.
So that's
yeah.
All right. So here's a just for fun question. Including Paul and Gene, how would you rank the 10 members of KISS? Starting with 10 being your least favorite to 1 being your most favorite. Let's start with Claudio.
I need to disconnect now.
Homework time.
I'm going to log off. Oh, man. Okay, well, this is one of the questions that, depending on the day, I might change the answer. Okay? This is like when they're asking you what's your favorite song or whatever. So, again, I have an issue with Tommy and Vinnie. Well, let's start, from 10 to 1. Okay, so 10, Mark St. John. Again, no disrespect to any of the members. I love them all. I love KISStory. I love all of the lineups, but that's the question, right? So you asked me 1 to 10. Okay, 10, Mark St. John. 9, Vinnie. And when I was putting the list together, I said, okay, when you say the best and the worst, I basically created the list based on contribution to the band, history of the band, and basically musical contribution. That's how I did it. Mm-hmm. Okay, because if not, it's even more complicated. So Mark St. John number 10, Vinnie Vincent number 9, Tommy number 8, Eric Carr 7, Eric Singer 6, Bruce Kulick, Ace, Peter, Paul, and Gene.
Okay. Rella, what about you?
This was a hard question for me. I agonized over it for hours.
Oh, wow.
Because it's like Claudio said, there were so many different ways that you could do this list. You could do it in significance. You could do it in tenure. You could do it in, there's just so many different ways you could do it. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it from 1 to 10, my favorites, and go with it. And that's what I did. Ace, 1. Gene, 2. Paul, Eric Carr, Bruce, Eric Singer, Tommy, Vinnie, Peter Criss, and Mark St. John.
Oh, wow.
Peter Criss, number 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
To me, Peter Criss was a jazz drummer.
What are the first 4? So say that again, the first 4?
Gene, Paul, and Eric Carr.
Eric Carr. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, Pat.
Me again. I'm just gonna. The 4 original members are my 4 favorites, like no particular order, but I'm gonna do the homework nonetheless. Mark St. John, Tommy Thayer, number 9. After that.
It's tough, eh? It's tough.
Yeah, I know it is. Eric Singer, Bruce Kulick, Eric Carr, Vinnie, and then number 4, it doesn't matter which one, Peter, Ace, Gene, Paul.
So for me, listen, I'm not a musician, so I'm not gonna base my list on musicianship. I don't know what I'm talking about. But it's interesting that this question is being asked now at the end of the road, because, if we look back to KISStory and what it meant to me personally. Okay. So for me, my list is based on my emotional connection with each of the members.
Okay.
So the least would be, obviously, I have less of an emotional connection with that band member, and number 1, the most emotional connection with that member.
Okay.
So number 10, Vinnie Vincent. Number 9, Mark St. John. Number 8, Ace Frehley. Number 7, Eric Singer. Number 6, Peter Criss. Number 5, Tommy Thayer. Number 4, Eric Carr. Number 3, Bruce Kulick. Number 2, Gene Simmons. And number 1, Paul Stanley.
Well, one final question to close the show, and I want you to pay tribute to one of the 10 KISS members. The tribute doesn't necessarily need to be your favorite member. So if you were to pay tribute to one of them out of the 10, Rolla, who could that be?
I would have to say Bruce Kulick.
Oh.
Because he, like I've said before, he's so approachable. He's such a nice guy. And when you talk to him, you see his heart. You not only meet him as a person, but you meet his heart. And he's kind and charismatic. And it's hard to explain, but you just feel his energy. He's so positive. I mean, he's just an amazing guy. And I'm like you, that matters a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bruce Kulick. Wow. You're super.
Yep.
Ask.
Bruce Kulick as well.
Oh my goodness.
Definitely Bruce Kulick. Now what's interesting about Bruce, I feel that his biggest contribution to the band came after he left the band. It's what he's doing right now. I want to pay tribute to Bruce because he's keeping amazing 80s KISS music alive. Yes, he's a great guy. Everything that Raul said, absolutely true. I met him personally. I've talked to him personally. I tried to get him to come to one of my events here in Montreal. So we had a little half-hour meeting at an expo a while back. So such a nice guy. But for what he continues to give to the band. That to us, to the fans, he's still part of the band. And when we go on the Kiss cruise, it's the Bruce Kulick cruise more than the Kiss cruise.
Mhm.
You know, it's incredible what he does and what he continues to do. And I'm hoping that once Kiss gets to the end of the road, that Bruce will continue to keep the memory of Kiss 80s alive. And I hope he does more of Carnival Souls, because that's something that really hasn't been touched on at all by the band. If you can really pay tribute to that, it would be amazing. But anyway, that's an aside. Again, definitely Bruce Kulick.
Okay, thank you. Pat?
To me, Paul Stanley, I'm going to say why, because I believe he's the reason Kiss is still there. Many people say it's Gene, but I say it's Paul, because during the 80s, Paul was the one who kept it together with not much. You know, Gene was half there, revolving door of musicians. Paul kept it together the whole time. So I think we have to thank him for that.
I'm going to pay tribute to Mr. Gene Simmons. Yes. To me, you know, what he did early on, his vision, you know, his work ethic, his focus was basically what created the myth. You know, that's, you know, we're talking about Kiss in the 70s and how much impact it had on us and on music. And to me, the big driving force early on, then of course, you know, Paul, you know, caught up and he became the main, you know, front man and everything in the 80s. No doubt, you know, that he took the band on his shoulders while Gene was doing something else. But if I look at the creation of the band, so we're doing a podcast now 50 years after, you know, the band was created. And to me, that the main reason why Kiss is a band and a brand, it's because of Gene Simmons. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just want to pay tribute to him.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to end the show with some closing comments. We'll start with Patrick.
Always a pleasure, and I'm glad you took my idea, and I appreciate it. Any way I can contribute to the show with ideas, I love it. I appreciate the opportunity to be there always. I am very thankful. A lot of fun.
Thank you. Raula, closing comments.
Thank you for having me again. Although I will say this was probably one of the hardest podcasts to do with you guys this time. You put me through a lot of homework, but that's okay. I enjoyed it. I always enjoy speaking with you guys and hearing your opinions, and it's always a pleasure.
You know, we've been talking about tributes. I want to pay tribute to the three of you. First, Claudio, I want our audience to know that your train arrived at 7:30 tonight from Quebec City. You've been working outside the city all week after being away for 2 weeks in another country, and still doing the podcast at 10 o'clock at night.
You're a trooper.
You really are. So thank you so much you're keeping this podcast alive, my friend. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Patrick, thank you so much for all of your amazing ideas on our discussion panels. These are all yours, man. These are all yours.
Thanks so much.
You know, so much fun. You're such a great person to have on this show.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Now, Craig unfortunately couldn't be on the show, and Raula graciously said yes last minute. You're amazing that way, you know. And you were amazing tonight. You're saying that this was your most difficult episode. I think you were the best of all the episodes you've done on this show. This episode, man, you really shined. Awesome. Very amazing stuff. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was awesome. You know, I have to echo what Pascal just said. You know, Pat, always a pleasure to have you.
Thanks.
Rolla, so nice to see you again. And I agree with Pat. You know, you shine. You know, your face, you know, shows so much happiness, and you were relaxed, and you were giving your opinions. We love to have you in the show. And again, you were mentioning, my itinerary, my trips and everything. I couldn't wait to come back, just to be here, doing this. And you have no idea, Pask, how many times I thought of you with this homework that you gave us, your teacher. This is what happens when you have a teacher, as part of the stuff. But again, no, that was lovely. I as usual, I really love, the different opinions with respect and everything. That was awesome. It was a tough topic. It was really a tough topic. Yeah. But I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. So, KISS Army, in your opinion, which replacement KISS member has made the biggest impact on KISStory? Give us your answers in the comment section. Remember, also, if you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please send them to talktome@KISSArmyNationPodcast.com. Until the next time, remember, never stop rocking. Take care, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, like and subscribe on YouTube or follow us on Spotify, Automatic, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to make yourself heard. Leave us a comment on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. See you all soon, KISS Army.